Well, if you admit
Well, that's
ignorance
not
and he
exactly
admits
right.
knowledge, as it
He
were.
hasn't got knowledge.
Well, but he believes he has knowledge. So
That's the whole nature of belief.
If we have two people, one of whom says, I don't know, God almighty, I hate all these absurd examples, but I go to two doctors, right? One of them, and I've got a pain in my wherever it is, and the first doctor says, I've no idea what's causing it, clear off, and the other one says, actually, it's because you've got a pimple in your thingy. Well, you know, and moreover, because this is what his God does, and moreover, I can cure it, I'll go for the second doctor.
No, but it's not saying a pimple in your thingy. He's saying there's a really special,
How do you know?
unimaginable, supernatural thing in your thingy.
Well,
That's
see,
the problem.
You're unwilling to accept the idea of anything that exists beyond nature.
Yes.
Well, that is begging the question in favor of atheism. That just is presupposing that atheism is true. And that's what the debate's
Well, you're
about.
presupposing that God is true.
Oh, no, not at all. I'm giving arguments for God's existence. And what I'm looking for is arguments for atheism. And this isn't, I mean, lots of atheists give arguments for their view. You know, the problem of evil and suffering in the world.
Oh, no, that's a terrible argument.
Well, that's what I notice that's what Richard Dawkins says too. Dawkins doesn't use that argument, but that is J.L. Mackie of Oxford, he used that argument.
Oh, must be a philosopher.
Well, it may, Lewis, be a terrible argument, but it's a pretty powerful argument when you're arguing against a Christian God who's supposed to be all merciful, isn't it?
You know, what? There's
Evil and suffering.
So you mean we must blame God for all the suffering in the world too?
I don't think that. I'm saying that atheists...
So who, if not God?
Offer arguments for atheism, and this would be an example. The atheist can't get off the hook here. He's making a knowledge claim.
But
God does not exist.
Oh, right.
See, that's a knowledge claim. It's the agnostic who makes no knowledge claim.
I don't say God does not exist. I say there's no evidence for God.
All right, well, then that's mere agnosticism.
No.
Yeah.
No, we atheists say we do not believe that God exists.
Well, that's compatible with God existing, you see.
No.
That's mere agnosticism.
No, it's not.
Atheism says that God does not exist, which is a claim to know something and therefore requires justification.
I'm terribly, this atheist doesn't say this. He just says there's no evidence for God.
All right, well, how would you differentiate yourself then from an agnostic?
Agnostic says I'm clueless as to whether God exists or not. And I'm a coward to try and make up my mind.
Well, now that's pejorative.
Yes, it is pejorative, and I mean it to be pejorative.
All right, what about the non-cowardly agnostic, like Bertrand Russell, say, who says, I don't know whether God exists, I don't know whether God does not exist.
Well, that's agnostic, yes.
Well, that's what you are.
No.
Well,
good
okay,
Lord.
then give us, if you're not that, then you need to give us some warrant for the belief that there is no God.
No. I just said
Otherwise,
I know of no evidence or any reason to believe in God whatsoever. This is a supernatural being for which I know of no evidence, and he's done nothing that I know of in the last 2,000 years.
Why did you lose your faith?
Me?
We know why. We know why Bill found it.
It's shameful. When I was young, I used to pray to God to help me with various things. My prayers weren't answered, so it was purely pragmatic. I gave it up. Sorry.
No, Bill's was a red-haired beauty in the front row. At least I may be slightly simplifying what you told me.
Or exaggerating.
Or possibly even. Listen, there is one basic, you may have basic laws for God and things, and there is a basic law of journalism. And we all observe it, I promise you this. First simplify, then exaggerate. You know, I hold to that. I hold to. So where we are, and I mean, you use much of your book to deny the circularity of your argument. What you've been trying to do tonight, forgive me if I've got this wrong, Lewis, is prove that it is in fact entirely a circular argument.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Tell him why.
Tell him why it's a circular.
Yeah.
Why it's a circular argument?
Why
because you want to believe, you need an explanation for things that you don't understand, like why the universe exists. And you're too frightened to admit that you don't know.
That's not the definition of what a circular argument is.
Well, it's circular-ish.
No, a circular argument is when your only reason for believing a premise is that you already accept the conclusion. That's what you're doing when you say there's nothing beyond nature, there is no supernatural. That's presupposing
no, but your argument
atheism.
is circular. That because there had to be a creator, therefore the creator had to be God.
No, I gave an argument.
No, I know, but I think that argument is totally false.
Well, then what you need to do,
we don't want to get
what you
involved
need
in
to
that
do,
again.
Professor Wolpert, is then to identify the false premise in the argument, because the logic is valid. The conclusion follows from the premises, so you have to show me which of the premises is false.
The premise is that there had to be a personal creator of the universe.
Okay, and then if you're going to argue that that's false, then you'll need to refute the two arguments that I gave for the personhood of the creator.
Oh, yes, well, there's no evidence for the personhood.
Well, I gave two.
Oh, well, the moral one is absurd, because there's plenty of morality. You don't believe that's not a strong one. What's the other one?
Oh, no, I think, well, that wasn't the argument for the personhood, though. The other arguments actually do give you a personal creator and designer. The arguments were that it must be a timeless and spaceless being, and therefore cannot be physical or material. And the only things that we know of that can fit that description are either minds or abstract objects. And abstract objects don't cause things. The number 7 can't cause anything. Therefore, the cause of the universe must be a mind.
I'm very suspicious of anything that's timeless and spaceless.
Well, you may be suspicious, but that's not really an argument or a refutation.
I'm not a good physicist on this.
Well, all right, let's get into the moral bit.
Yes.
Because you, Lewis, offered us various illustrations, various arguments as to why we can arrive at a moral state. And effectively what you're saying, as I understand it, and you'll tell me I'm wrong, I'm sure, effectively you're saying we do these moral things because over a long enough period we have concluded that they're in our interest to do them.
Absolutely.
Right. Why do people do those things that are not in their selfish interest but are clearly decent and good? Why do they sacrifice themselves in the cause of something from which they will benefit nothing?
We're into the whole thing, about people's behavior, how the brain works, about sociology, about mental illness. There are all sorts of complications.
Have you never looked at somebody, have you never met anybody, and it might be a Mandela figure,
yes,
or it might be a Mother Teresa figure, or it might be an atheist, and said, actually, I don't know this person terribly well, don't know him at all, don't know anything about his medical background, whatever, but he's a good guy, good person, or
no, I think
good person.
No, I don't have to go to those great people. I can go to my partner and my friends and say they're good people.
Absolutely you can, and you can say they're good people. Why are they good people?
Because they help me a great deal and I like them.
Won't quite do in the case of Mandela.
Sure. Is that the basis of your moral system, because they help you?
And help other people too.
Okay.
So it's their behavior. There is nothing, that you don't then go the extra step and say, why are they doing that? Well, even though it may not be in their best interest to do it.
Let's be clear that we don't really understand how people behave or why they behave.
He's offering you an explanation.
What, by a god? Oh, come on. What about all...
Don't shout at me, it was his argument.
Sorry, I won't shout again. I can behave badly at times. I'm sorry.
Not at all.
No, to keep behaving badly.
But there are lots of people who are criminals who do all sorts of terrible things, and we don't fully understand why they do all those things. And some, people have breakdowns, they do all sorts of strange things, sure.
Could I clarify something about the argument? Because I think this is apt to lead to misunderstanding. My argument is not that belief in God is necessary in order to do good or live a moral life or be a decent chap. The argument has nothing to do about belief in God. The argument is that without God, there isn't any absolute standard of right and wrong, and therefore what we call moral values are just the spin-offs of sociobiological evolution. Altruism, like you mentioned self-sacrificial behavior, a mother rushing into a burning building.
No, specifically not a mother to save a child, because there's a perfectly good reason for a mother saving the child.
But if you say that, see, then again, you're still misunderstanding my argument. What I was going to say is that on the sociobiological point of view, that kind of altruistic behavior is just the selfish gene wanting to perpetuate itself, and it's the same kind of behavior you see in a troop of baboons, where you see what looks like altruistic behavior, or even in an ant heap, where fighter ants will sacrifice themselves for the good of the heap. My point is that on the atheistic view, that's all moral values are.
Is that right? Let's clear that
up. And I would like to ask...
Is there any difference, let me, you come back in 1 second, but let me just ask Lewis whether there is any difference between the altruistic behavior of a human being, somebody who may sacrifice him or herself for a cause which will bring them no particular benefit, and a baboon in a troop.